Jefferson Clinton.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you all very much. Please be seated. First, thank you for being here at the 4th Clinton Global Initiative University. I want to begin by thanking Chancellor Marianne Fox and the entire UC San Diego community for having us. This is the first time we have met in California, and we chose UC San Diego because of its ongoing, consistent commitment to community service. And I thank all of you who are here to do that. Washington Monthly magazine ranks universities in America based on how they contribute to the public good. Last year, they ranked UC San Diego #1 in the country. I also ask you to join me in acknowledging our sponsors who helped to make this week possible and affordable for you and for us. The Dell Social Innovation Competition, Joan and Irwin Jacobs, Laureate Education, Life Technologies, Andy Nahas and the Prospect Fund, Qualcomm Incorporated, and U.S. Global Investors. Thank you to all of you very much. We opened this to the larger UC San Diego public, but the delegates here at CGIU include more than 1,000 students from all 50 states in our country, plus 90 other countries, all told from 349 institutions of higher education. You have made 950 commitments already to change your schools, your communities, and the lives of the people around the corner and across the world. And for that, I thank you. You know, young people have a greater ability to do public good as private citizens than ever before. Since its inception in 2008, CGIU commitments have helped about 150,000 people around the world. Thousands of children and adults have received access to education that wasn't there before, or job training. More than 80,000 improved access to health care and social services. Millions of dollars have been raised for scholarships, for humanitarian relief, for hospitals and other programs. I'm very glad that we've been able to help people turn their good ideas into positive actions. This September, we'll have the 7th meeting of the Clinton Global Initiative in New York, convening heads of states, CEOs, nonprofit directors, philanthropists, people from all over the world. The members of CGI have, over 7 years, made about 2,000 commitments, and we have documented improvements in the lives of 300 million people in 170 countries. Both CGI and the CGIU are global networks of people who want to use the resources they have, beginning with the ideas and energy of youth, to make a real difference. And you have something our often much wealthier annual meeting members don't have. When I was in politics for quite a long while, I loved every day of it, but most debates were dominated by 2 questions. What are you going to do, and how much money are you going to spend on it? Right? I mean, look at the debate in Washington on this budget. Should we have raised taxes on millionaires and invested more in education and technology, or should we just cut more? Or if it's a controversial issue, the question was always, well, are you for it or against it? Nobody said, well, why are you for it? Or if you're against it, what's your alternative? And I believe that in the 21st century, the most important question may well be not are you for it or against it, or what are you going to do and how much money are you going to spend on it, but whatever you propose to do and however much money you have or don't, how do you propose to do it to turn your good intentions into real changes in other people's lives so that your lives and the lives of the people with whom you share this planet for a brief period will be better together? The how question. And I think college students basically are more prone to think about the how question. You, by and large, don't have $1 million to throw around on your commitments. You might start with $1,000 or $100 or even $10. But you have talent and time. And you have to think about what it is you're going to do that will attract other supporters to your cause. How are you going to keep score? If it doesn't work quite as you imagined, is there some way to change course and still achieve what you set out to do? I'd like to give you a few examples of some of the commitments that CGIU members have made this year. Merlin Lee of the University of Nevada is connecting Native American undergraduates with professional mentors, a big deal. On the whole, the Native Americans who live on tribal lands without gambling still have the lowest per capita income of any ethnic group in America, and they need this education. Matt Severson from Brown built a website called the School Fund. It lets anybody, anywhere, who logs onto the website pay all or a portion of school fees for individual students in Tanzania, Kenya, or Haiti. One of the cruel ironies of the world in which we live is that in America, if you're a working person with modest incomes, or if your family's on welfare, you at least have access to free public education. In countries that are so poor they have no revenue systems, the poorest people have to pay even to go to the public schools. In Haiti, fewer than half the kids are enrolled in school, fewer than half of them in free schools. The others have to pay tuition. And you see this throughout Africa and many countries in Southeast Asia and elsewhere. This is a great idea. Charlotte Crone from North Carolina Central University has found an interesting way, an immensely practical way, to try to empower people to reverse America's current #1 public health problem, childhood obesity. She is providing children with weekly meal plans, food stamp compliant grocery lists, and recipes that can feed an entire family of 4 for a whole week for $50 in a nutritious way. Max Zilber from right here at UC San Diego. Now, this is one of those projects that will probably be copied after you leave here elsewhere, which is the whole point of this, by the way. This is supposed to be a laboratory of democracy. In much the way states were considered laboratories of democracy by the Founding Fathers, networks of cooperating young people should be considered the laboratories of 21st century democracy. Think of the young people in Egypt talking to the young people in Tunisia and how they reached out to the young people in Belgrade, in Serbia, who helped to topple Mr. Milosevic. They created a laboratory of democracy. Anyway, here's what Max Silber is going to do. He's come up with creative ways to educate his fellow students about changes in the federal education tax credits, and I might add the student loan law, because if there's one thing I learned as president and before as a governor, just because you changed the law doesn't mean anybody knows you did it, understands how it works, knows how to access the benefits of it, or will do a thing unless somebody basically puts it in language they can understand and creates a user-friendly system. Mac's goal is to save the students just here at this one university $2.5 million a year. If we did that on a pro rata basis at every institution of higher education in America, the dropout rate from college would plummet precipitously. So I thank you for that. We're going to talk about some tough issues this week. Poverty along the U.S.-Mexican border and how it's been aggravated by violence in the conflicts between the Mexican government, the narco-traffickers, and, frankly, United States policy, which often results in American gun stores arming the drug gangs. The fight for LGBT rights, pollution in our oceans, climate change, the relationship of college affordability to the almost unbelievable falling from the perch of world leadership in the percentage of our young people with college degrees. From the end of World War II and the advent of the GI Bill, the United States consistently ranked first in the world in the percentage of our young people with four-year degrees. Even though we took in wave after wave after wave of immigrants, even though we saw dramatic changes in the family structure and especially in the last 30 years, increases in income inequality, all of which bore down on the performance of our schools, we knew we had hundreds of world-class colleges and universities, and we kept our #1 ranking. Now it's estimated that by 2050, 2/3 of the new jobs will require some form of post-high school education, and virtually 100% of the new jobs will be created by people who have a college education. And yet, from the day I left office until the day before the financial meltdown, the United States fell from first in the world to 9th in the percentage of its adults with four-year degrees. And if you stop at young adults, ages 25 to 36, we fell to 12th. The interesting thing is, the hopeful thing, we still rank first in the world of the percentage of people who actually go on to college. There are all kinds of other problems, too. We're not producing enough scientists and engineers and other things, but we've got to deal with this, and you've got to help us. Your application to come here shows that you believe you can make a difference and you wish to do so. We're going to try to help you reaffirm that conviction and amplify the impact of your efforts. You'll probably get more out of talking to each other over the next 2 days than nearly anything else you do, but I hope you find these panels helpful as well. Before we start the first plenary and I introduce the first commitments, I want you to hear from two people. Paul Jacobs, our anchor sponsor, the chairman of Qualcomm, and first, the chancellor of UC San Diego, Marianne Fox. She became a chemist in the 1960s when there weren't very many women chemists in the United States or anywhere else. As a university professor and administrator, she has tried to help other young women who want to pursue careers in science. I first met Dr. Fox when she was a scientific advisor to Congress in 1993 after the first World Trade Center bombing. Last fall, she was awarded the National Medal of Science, the highest commendation a scientist can receive within the United States. This is really important. She got it for her research into how to harness and deliver renewable energy, and for creating partnerships between university and industry that have led to the development of new jobs. In June, we're going to have our first CGI meeting in Chicago devoted exclusively to trying to create jobs within the United States. My own conviction is the simplest, most obvious way is to change the way we produce and consume energy. But the Chancellor knows a lot more about it than I do. So please welcome Mary Ann Fox.
Wow, thank you, President Clinton. We are so pleased that the Clinton Global Initiative University has chosen to come here to UC San Diego. And how about the students from UC San Diego who are here today and volunteering? Thank you. I'd like to extend a special welcome to all of the students and participants who have traveled here from around the world. I'm told there are 1,100 of you, only 200 from UC San Diego, from all 50 states and from 90 countries. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Now, in order to attend this conference, all of you had to submit an application and a commitment to action. We had the great fortune here at UC San Diego of attending previous sessions, and we know that that commitment to action has translated already into a plan which you can see visibly on campus, and I hope you won't leave it until you do see it. You were selected to be here for a reason. You're here because you're a leader and a visionary. That is, you have a vision for the future. You also have a passion for making this world a better place. And that's something we know about at UC San Diego. Since our founding 50 years ago, we have become known for high-quality education and for our commitment to service, for which we are ranked, as President Clinton told you, #1 in the nation. We're very proud of that. We're also known for our innovation and groundbreaking research. It was UC San Diego's founder, Roger Revelle, who pioneered the groundbreaking research taken up by David Keeling that demonstrated the rise of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, thus bringing the world's attention for the first time to global warming, and that was done on this campus. Our students, our faculty, our staff, our alumni carry on this tradition of excellence and innovation today. They are using their UC San Diego education and research to improve our environment, our health, our community, our world. One example is our Global Health Initiative, which coordinates research and training in global health across the world and generates new collaborations and programs to meet that challenge in emerging nations. Another example is our new Center for Global Justice, which we are launching this week. That center will provide support and structure for social science researchers who are working on numerous divergent global initiatives so that they can exchange ideas, work across disciplines, convert the theories into meaningful action. We know that knowledge is power. We also know that we must take action if we're going to help people and make a difference. That's why you are here as part of the Clinton Global Initiative University. Over the next 2 days, you will network and brainstorm. You'll hear about practical applications and innovative solutions. You'll hear about things that are currently being used to address global challenges. You'll also gain the information and tools you need to translate your dreams into actions. In 2009, as a participant of this institution, UC San Diego formulated its commitment to action to own their own impact. We are working to lower campus greenhouse gas emissions, change our transportation paradigm by providing low-cost, energy-efficient transportation. In fact, if you see on campus buses driving around that are blue, those are normal fueled buses. But those that are green, by definition, are green, using recycled materials and alternate fuels. While you're here, please join in to look at the Sustainable Resource Center at the Cinnamon Price Center. You'll see what can be done on essentially no money in preserving what we're trying to do in sustainability. You'll find it a wonderful opportunity. So we're proud to be this year's host. We're proud to be active participants in the Clinton Global Initiative at University. Just like this university, UC San Diego is committed to improving our community and the world. The blind author Helen Keller once said, "It is a terrible thing to see if you have no vision." The very fact that you're here suggests that you have that vision for the next century, and the world will benefit for you. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the positive impact you will have on our families, and thank you for joining with the faculty, students, and staff at UC San Diego. It is now my great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Paul Jacobs, the Chairman and CEO of Qualcomm. I know you'll forgive Paul for going to Berkeley instead of to San Diego, but he seems to have done well in his field nonetheless. He is a leader in the field, for example, of mobile communications, and he has spearheaded efforts to develop and commercialize mobile technology breakthroughs that have contributed to the growth of Qualcomm and the industry. He's also been granted more than 35 patents for his inventions in wireless technology. So please welcome one of San Diego's great citizens, Paul Jacobs.
Well, thanks, Chancellor Fox, for that great introduction. And also, I wanted to say thank you to President Clinton for bringing all of us together and for all the great work that he does helping millions and millions of people around the world. And I also want to say to all of you, congratulations for being part of CGIU 2011. I hope you're enjoying it here in San Diego at UCSD, because this place is a center of innovation, and it has played a very important part in my life and in the life of our company, Qualcomm. The co-founder of Qualcomm, who is my father, was a dropout in the sense. He used to be a professor here and then left to go into business. And you'll be hearing from him, I think, at the food bank on Sunday. But what I really wanted to get up and talk about was kind of what's going on in the world today, and really how we bring together entrepreneurs like my father and research universities and companies like Qualcomm, but also bringing you into the equation, how you have a really important role to play in making the world a better place. And we're really sitting at a particular time in history. There's really a revolution going on, not just in technology, but how that technology is being used. And you see things like the cell phone and social networking combined together, and it's helping to do things like topple dictators. It's helping to connect people around the world. It's helping to solve a lot of long-standing problems. I mean, we just have seen people, young people, your age, in Egypt and Tunisia, across North Africa and the Middle East, giving themselves a voice that they didn't have previously, and using their phones, taking pictures of snipers on rooftops and posting it to Facebook so people would know where to go and not be harmed, and so brought these protests to life. And it's not just about how we're going to break down obstacles. We also want to build things up. We want to build connections between people, but we also can bring opportunity to places that it hasn't been before. And when I talk about a revolution, that's the revolution that you guys are going to lead. If you think about your phone, I mean, it used to be a phone was something that was about making phone calls, voice. And now, today, you have this hunk of metal and glass and plastic, and you stroke its screen, and you have access to all all the knowledge of the human race. I mean, that's a pretty amazing thing. But, okay, that's about us. Think about the 2.5 billion people around the world who live on less than $2 a day. Many of those people have a cell phone too. And many of those people will get their only access to the internet and to the broader world outside when they use that phone as their computing device. It literally will be the first and only internet experience most of those people have. And this is not a fantasy. In Kenya today, 99% of the internet traffic goes over mobile phones. So we take that kind of capability, we match it with the kind of visionary leadership that all of you represent, and these technologies really will change people's lives. So let me give you some examples of things that we've been able to do at Qualcomm. We have an initiative called Wireless Reach, and what we do is we work both with local and global partners using mobile technologies for improving quality of life and standard of living in areas of healthcare and education and entrepreneurship and public safety, a whole broad range of areas. And so, for example, in Brazil, we're helping indigenous people get real-time information on where to go fish, information about weather conditions. They know where to take the fish so they don't all go to the same market and push the prices down. It's been shown that this actually improves the economic condition of the people in those areas. In the United States, in Atlanta, in rural North Carolina, in Washington, D.C., here in San Diego, we're using the phone to provide low-income Americans with better education. And down the road in Tijuana, we're doing a project that helps a government clinic take care of tens of thousands of diabetic patients that they wouldn't be able to reach out to without the ability to have some lower skilled people go out into the community with the phone and get that information back to the doctors and the healthcare professionals that can take action and make sure that people are taking care of their conditions. In Indonesia, we've been working with the Grameen Foundation on a microfinancing initiative, and what we do there is we're creating small businesses by allowing villagers to sell airtime minutes to their neighbors. And a really cool thing about this is that 93% of those entrepreneurs are women, and 100% of them they've built a profitable business now. Okay, so we have this opportunity. There are examples out there of what we can do, and really, in the years ahead, we're really going to need to use your skills if we're going to continue to make this kind of progress. And you're going to need to develop those skills. And one of the things that's critically important is that we make sure, both in America and around the world, that we continue to educate people in science, technology, engineering, and math. And obviously, there's a lot of work that governments need to do, businesses need to do, the universities need to do, but what you need to do is get into those fields, because I really encourage you to consider a career in those fields, because I will tell you, it's been my experience and the experience of people at our company that their ideas literally make an impact on the world, in all corners of the world. And so the problems that you're solving in these fields are not just numbers on a paper. It's not just sitting inside a laboratory looking at a bubbling beaker. The impact that you have isn't just published in a scientific journal. It's out there in the real world, and you will get to do some really cool things. Look at me. I mean, I have a PhD in electrical engineering. I get to hang out with President Clinton. It's not so bad. But we're here to talk about innovation, and innovation isn't just the creativity to have an idea. It is taking that idea and executing on it and putting it into action. And you are the ones who are going to be at the forefront of doing those things. So thinking in new ways, getting real results, that's what this CGIU is all about. So if we can all leave here tonight dedicated to making things happen in the world, we're going to be a success. And thanks everybody for being here.
Thank you. Thanks, Doc. Now, before we get into the panel, we're going to announce, as we will at the opening of every one of these plenaries, a few of the commitments, so you'll get a feel for what your fellow delegates here are thinking. The name of this commitment is the School Fund, and I'd like to invite two students from Brown University in Rhode Island, Saeed Hassan and Matthew Severson, to come up here while I describe their commitment. There they are. Let's give them a hand. Worldwide, there are 115 million children who do not go to school, not at all. 75% of them live in South Asia or sub-Saharan Africa. I just told you about a substantial number in Haiti. In every developing country with a per capita income of $2 a day or less, each year, just 1 year of schooling, adds 10% a year to earning capacity for life. So this is really profoundly important. Last year, Matt won a CGIU Outstanding Commitment Award for the work you saw in the video at the start of the plenary. He and Saeed work with local NGOs in Africa and in Haiti to identify students who need funding. They post their profiles on the website. They follow through with funders, students, and schools. They also ensure that the students who receive funding have access to computers to stay in regular touch with their mentors and learn how to navigate the internet. This year, Matt and his team commit to expand the school fund to recruit an additional 800 funders for 500 students. That is, they will quintuple the number of people they help through their program. The school fund will also work with students in new countries, giving its supporters new options that include Ethiopia, India, Madagascar, Malawi, Sierra Leone, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. It's a very good project, so let's give them a hand. Now I would like to invite to the stage Cindy Ding, Qinglina Hu, Benjamin Liu, Amanda Gutierrez, all undergraduates at Rice University in Houston, Texas. I love this commitment. Swaziland, a landlocked country near Lesotho, both completely surrounded by the Republic of South Africa, has been devastated by the AIDS epidemic. More than a quarter of the adults between the ages of 15 and 49 are infected with the virus. The nation's average life expectancy is 37. Spoons or measuring cups commonly are used to take medication for HIV and AIDS, but they often result in inaccurate dosing of antiretrovirals, which limits the impact of the drugs and can actually lead to viral resistance so that life-saving medicine is no longer effective. I am profoundly interested in this. A lot of you know that our Health Access Initiative has negotiated the world's lowest prices for high-quality generic medicine. About 4 million people in the world, more than half the adults and about 75% of the children in poor countries that are alive because of medicine are getting it off these contracts. And it is sickening to think of the people you lose because the dosage gets messed up. So, Cindy, Ching, Benjamin, and Amanda launched Team Dose Right to distribute 200,000 dose right syringe clips in Swaziland to ensure accurate dosage of medication. Dose Right is a simple, inexpensive plastic clip that attaches to an oral syringe. It stops the syringe plunger right after the right amount of medication has been dispensed. The Dose Right syringe clip was successfully field tested during last summer. Now Team Dose Right is collaborating with both the Clinton Health Access Initiative and the Swaziland Ministry of Health to help distribute these clips. I should also say, by way of background to those of you who don't follow this, Swaziland has been one of the top 3 or 4 countries in the incidence of HIV infection for a very long time, and for years and years and years, long after South Africa started taking it seriously, after Botswana started taking it seriously, after Lesotho said everybody 12 or over should be tested, they did nothing. About 2 or 3 years ago, they had got religion in a big way. They are seriously trying to address this, and this tool will save an inordinate number of lives. You should support this, and we could do this in every country with any kind of HIV infection rate. It would help everywhere. It would lengthen the time the first-line drugs work, and they are now dramatically less expensive than the second-line drugs, which about 10% of the infected population has to take anyway. So this is a great deal they've done. Let's give them a hand. Here's what it looked like. You could provide a lot of them with not much money. Now, our third commitment, I would like to invite to the stage 2 students from the University of Pennsylvania, Corey Metzman and Jacob Blumenfeld-Gantz. The name of this commitment is Dorm Room Diplomacy. No jokes. Listen to this. Last year, a Pew survey found that populations of largely Muslim countries hold overwhelmingly negative views of the United States. In both Turkey and Pakistan, only 17% of the people have a positive opinion of America. And in a 2006 Gallup poll, 4 in 10 Americans admit feeling prejudice against Muslims, and nearly a quarter of Americans say they wouldn't want to have a Muslim as a neighbor. Now, contrast this to some counterfacts. When America was widely unpopular in the Muslim world because of our position in the Iraq War, there were 10 countries in southern and eastern Africa, some of whom had overwhelmingly Muslim majority populations, who kept liking us even though they disagreed with our position. Why? Because of PEPFAR, the American Government AIDS Program, the Gates Foundation, the work our foundation did, because they thought we cared whether their children lived or died, and it made us human to them and them human to us. Most Americans don't know. You saw those congressional hearings on the role of terrorism in the United States. Most Americans don't know that more than 200 Muslims lost their lives in the World Trade Center bombing, that a substantial number of Muslim American veterans have been killed in Afghanistan and Iraq. There's a lot we don't know. To address the divide, Corey and Jacob recently formed Dorm Room Diplomacy, which commits to establish an intercultural dialogue between American and Middle Eastern college students through video conferencing. Dorm Room Diplomacy will facilitate weekly 2-hour video conferences between American college students and students from the Middle East on topics that include cultural stereotypes, American foreign policy, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, women's rights, the role of new media outlets, and freedom of speech. Beginning this spring, they will also partner with the Department of State to host online sessions during which students from many countries can pose questions to U.S. policymakers. I know one of those. At the end of each semester, Dorm Room Diplomacy plans to have students take the Implicit Association Test, an online test developed at Harvard to measure how the participants' perception of each other have changed. This is a really worthy endeavor. For those of you who've been active in Middle Eastern affairs or in the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, the most astonishing example of this kind of interaction that I have personally witnessed is in a program called Seeds of Peace, where Israeli kids and kids from various Muslim countries, mostly in the Middle East, and then now increasingly children from other conflict areas go to summer camp and live with each other and just talk these things through. But this dorm room diplomacy mechanism, because it's interactive and viral, gives us a chance to reach millions of young people if it is beginning to work, and then decide how to follow up. So I think that they got a great idea. I'm thrilled that they have done it, and I think we should give Corey and Jacob a big hand. Thank you. Now, before we start the panel, our final commitment involves Agri Otayayo, a graduate student in global health at Ohio University. So, Agri, come on out. Give him a hand. In sub-Saharan Africa, a woman's risk of dying of preventable complications from pregnancy and childbirth is 1 in 16. That contrasts with 1 in 2,800 in industrialized nations with good health systems. In Kenya, this means that nearly 14,700 women and girls die every single year from pregnancy-related complications. Agre grew up in the Korogocho slums in Nairobi. He has seen the devastating effects of this problem firsthand. He is committing to a 2-year initiative to reduce maternal and neonatal mortality in these impoverished neighborhoods. He will work with a group of 2,600 residents, pregnant women and their partners, who will volunteer to send regular free text messages about their own health and the health of other mothers and babies in their communities. Agre will use a software program to aggregate information from these text messages and make a map that shows the frequency and location of common health problems. 30 traditional birth attendants will be trained to monitor and add to this map so they can report patterns to the local media practitioners and NGOs. He will also mobilize 12 young people to create weekly community radio programs and videos about maternal and neonatal health. The radio shows will broadcast on a station that reaches 150,000 people. I must say it is rare when we do these things that particularly a young person who wants to have a hands-on impact understands the full impact of data collection and locating centers of problems on the ability to solve them. The fact that this young man grew up in those neighborhoods and knows they need hard numbers to see where there are a concentration of problems so that limited resources can be deployed to save lives is a great tribute to him, and also makes it much more likely that if he gets the support he needs, that he will succeed in reducing deaths and injuries. Let's give him a big hand. Now we're going to have our first panel, and I will briefly introduce the panelists, ask a few questions. Meanwhile, you guys are supposed to be able to text in questions, and after a few minutes, I'll start asking yours instead of mine. They will doubtless be better. First, I want to invite the co-founder of YouTube and co-founder and chairman of FLOSSCA, Chad Hurley, former CEO of YouTube, the world's largest video sharing site, to come to the stage. Every politician I know lives in mortal fear of being on YouTube. So Chad's going to have to tell us what we can do to solve these problems through social networking like this. Our next panelist is a longtime friend of Hillary's and mine, fellow New Yorker, the Honorable Shirley Ann Jackson, president of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York. A theoretical physicist who was chairman of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission between 1995 and 1999, and currently serves on the President's Council Advisors on Science and Technology. Her research and policy focus on energy security and national capacity for innovation, including the quiet crisis of looming gaps in science, technology, and engineering workforce, and the reduced support for basic research, is very important. I just have to say, I'm not going to get very political here probably, but if you ask the wrong question, it is very hard to get the right answer. You agree with that? So we're back to asking this question that got us in a lot of trouble 30 years ago. Should you do it with the government or the private sector? Are all spending cuts good and all tax increases bad? Can you, these are kind of dogmatic questions that don't have anything to do with necessarily whether we are majoring in the majors or majoring in the minors. Are we creating a future that we can all share, a broadly shared prosperity? If we aren't creating enough people in science and technology, how are we going to get them without some collective investment? So I want to talk to Shirley about some of that. Next, Greg Lucier, the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Life Technologies, a global biotech company based in Carlsbad, California. He's also on the board of directors at something called Synthetic Genomics. What I want to know from him is, except for giving the women in my family a chance to ridicule me, what is the true scientific significance of the finding a few months ago by the genome researchers that all human beings on planet Earth, except for those whose genome is 100% delineated from sub-Saharan Africa, everybody else has between 1% and 4% of their genomic makeup from our pre-human ancestors, the Neanderthals. What good is it doing us to know that? And what can young people do with it? It did not surprise Hillary and Chelsea to find out that I was part Neanderthal. But it did surprise them to find out that they were too. Our next panelist, Jessica Matthews, is the co-founder and CEO of Uncharted Play, Inc., and co-investor of Socket. She's a first-generation Nigerian-American with dual citizenship and has had firsthand experience of the complex reality that people in resource-poor areas must live with every single day. And she has done a truly remarkable thing with this socket idea, which I believe I should let her explain to you. It's quite a hoot. So let's give them all a hand and we'll start our conversation. I'd like to begin with Chad, and I'll just ask a simple question. We know what the social media has done in terms of connecting people. We know that information technology generally to scale. And I would just invite all of you who are doing this, remember what Chad said, and if you have any ideas about how we can do a better job than we have done so far in giving very specific information and user-friendly options for people who wanted to give $5 or $10 to something on a wide scale, I'd like to know it. But right now, we do it when we're moved by an emergency. But in normal times, most of these public purpose, private entrepreneurial things are funded by a few big contributions that provide a lion's share of the money. We've got to create a global network of givers who are also part of the conversation so they know what's going on. Shirley, what is the impact on America's innovation future of the relatively insufficient number of scientists and technologists and mathematicians we're getting through our universities, combined with the immigration policy that exists now, combined with the current financial crisis? And what can we do to take that issue out of the current partisan political debate and make it a future issue that all Americans should be interested in? What's your take on this? And since you're a university leader, how did we drop from first to 12th in the world as a percentage of young adults with four-year degrees in this last decade? What's your take on that?
Well, I think one has to take a bit of context. If you look at the overall growth in U.S. GDP, particularly since World War II, even over the last 50 years, the general numbers suggest that 50% of the growth of the GDP has come from scientific discovery and technological innovation, which really means that about 5% of the population has been responsible for that, because that's roughly what we're talking about. Now, we've had the benefit of being an attractor, a net attractor of exquisite talent from abroad that has really augmented our nascent capabilities. But while all of that has gone on, there's been a drop-off in the interest and persistence of young Americans in these fields. And so I've called that the quiet crisis, as you know, and it is quiet because it creeps up on us over time. It's a crisis because by the time we recognize it, it takes decades to create a high-functioning engineer like my friend here. So the implications are strong. It's as if we are falling away from the belief and understanding of how important having that kind of talent attracted here and that kind of talent developed here. But then if you ask, why have we had this overall drop-off in persistence and graduation, I think we have to look more deeply into our educational system, particularly K-12. As well, you know, as various groups have grown as a percentage of the population, they've not been sufficiently engaged and prepared to move into and through the university.
Do you think there are fewer people going into this because in the last 30 years we have disproportionately shifted income into finance and upper management as opposed to science and technology and teaching and 1,000 other things?
Well, certainly finance attracts many, many people because, or has, until more recent times, still does really, because of the extraordinary wealth that people are able to generate. But I think, in fact, we have to do a better job of telling a broader story. Because if you look at Chad, if you look at Qualcomm, you're talking about people whose work is rooted in science and technology. And they create great wealth, not only for themselves, but for other people, and transform whole communities. And so I think it's a misnomer for people to think that the wealth only resides in one sector. But because we've not really made that totally clear, and we've only talked about jobs in science and technology, as opposed to wealth creation and economic development, I think we missed the boat.
Well, first of all, I completely agree with it. If you just take these two examples you mentioned, in the 8 years when I was president, I always tell people I got really lucky because information technology broke out of its basically discrete sectors, Route 128 in Massachusetts and Silicon Valley and the video game companies in Texas and the exchange companies up in the DC area, and it exploded into everything. So in my 8 years, direct IT jobs were only 8% of employment, but they were nearly 30% of job growth and 35% of wage growth. And that's why the last 4 years I served were the only 4-year period since 1981 when the bottom 20%'s income in percentage terms rose as much as the top 20%, even though there were still inordinate gains for people at the top, the very top. But it was because it was a job generator for others. It had a multiplier effect, and they did create wealth, and they used the finance system to do it, and that's the best and highest use of the finance system. But you can't let the tail wag the dog here, and we need, somehow I think part of the problem for our not being able to have a source of new employment every 5 to 8 years, which you must have in a big open economy, is that we haven't kept our science and technology base up. Should we, we got a little tight after 9/11 on our immigration policies, and we're a little sloppy on how we use the so-called H-1B visas. Is there a transitional fix we should adopt while we're trying to get all the young people interested in these subjects again?
Well, certainly. I think that if you ask any university president, essentially universally, we would tell you, unless there's a reason to think otherwise, staple the green card to the PhD, and let's keep the people here. And
think we ought to pass the DREAM Act? You favor the DREAM Act?
I do.
Me too. I just thought we'd plug that. Okay. I don't think our position is going to prevail anytime soon, but I favor it. Now, Greg, in my dream scenario for the United States economy when I left office, I wanted last 8 years, now the 10 years, to be devoted to Chancellor Fox's specialty. It's changing the way we produce and consume energy. And then I believe that the coming decade would be driven as an economic engine largely by breaking barriers and biotechnology. Number one, is that realistic? Do you expect there to be a lot of commercial applications coming out of the genome and other scientific advances? And if so, is the United States in a position to take full advantage of it? And if not, what should we do about it?
I think you championed this biotech revolution by championing the Human Genome Project, the original sequencing of the first human, about 10 years ago, actually, just this year. And a lot of people say, what have we gotten for it? The reality is the science has moved 4 times faster than Moore's Law in the last decade. And actually, now, this year, going forward, we're at...
Tell them what Moore's Law is.
Moore's Law is, Paul Jacobs could tell it even better than I, but basically it's the doubling of the processing power of a semiconductor every 2 years. And DNA sequence, is that about right? Close enough? Well, we went 4 times faster than it, whatever it was, okay? And so the cost when you were the president to do that first genome was about $3 billion. Now you can do it for about $3,000. And with the latest technologies coming out, it's going to go even below $1,000. When that starts happening, and it is, now you can start unleashing this incredible life sciences revolution into healthcare, solving cancer, which is a disease of the DNA, to synthetic genomics, reprogramming algae to make fuel, to agricultural and feeding people the 3 billion coming on the planet over the next couple decades. And so I think if the 20th century was about the physical sciences and the amazing things that a Qualcomm has done, the 21st century is going to be about life sciences and maybe even bringing them together. Now, the last part of your question was, what about the United States? Virtually all of this innovation has been done here. It is ours to lose, and we've got to solve the problems you were just chatting with Shirley about. Because if we don't, this incredible revolution that will change the world for the good, change the standard of living in this country for the better, is not going to necessarily be celebrated here. And I think it would be a shame.
Let me ask you one specific question about the intersection of scientific advances and commercialization. I have had, and I don't necessarily have a view on this, I'm honestly asking a question, but it will affect all these young people that we hope will go into science and do this kind of stuff, or take the benefits of scientific advances and try to spread them like those students from Rice are doing with the dosing thing. Has our patent system gotten so fragmented that we are going to, in effect, by allowing people to take out patents on very small parts of the genome discoveries, to both either paralyze the needed development of life-saving medicines or make them prohibitively expensive for people? I'll just give you an example. My mother died of complications from breast cancer. Nearly any living American of a certain age has had someone in his or her family die of breast cancer. So I was ecstatic that the first real variants in the genomic pattern that seemed to leap out at the researchers seemed to indicate a high probability of the development of breast cancer in a woman. So that, last year the doctors recommended that most women didn't need annual mammographies until age 50, and then a lot of people were scared to death. But if you had that information, they would tell you if you should start at 25, and then everybody else could start at 50.
That's right.
So do we need to fix this patent system? Because now everybody says that the people who have this patent are going to be able to charge so much for whatever comes out of it that it'll take us decades, and God knows how many people will die before we fix it. On the other hand, if somebody makes an intellectually coherent discovery, they ought to be able to protect the fruits of their labor. So what's the answer?
That's a good question. Actually, our company is one of the largest owners of gene patents in the world. And the reality is we don't make a dollar off of it because of the very thing you're getting at. It's just crazy that we should be able to patent genes. And the reality is I think our judicial system is coming around to the right decision to where you can't just patent an observation in nature. And I think more now than ever, if we're going to read genomes of humans, of plants, and all sorts of species, you can't be blocked by watching what you see when you read that genome. It will stop and retard all the great work that should come from now. And so our view is actually the judicial system, which has now ruled that you can't patent genes going forward, is the right decision. And we hope when it gets to the Supreme Court it stands, and so that science can be unleashed and this future can be really taking place.
Yeah, Shirley, go ahead. What are you going to say?
Actually, he's hitting on a very important point that actually is relevant to our discussion. And that is, now I'm a physicist, so my life and my early career was all about discovery and uncovering new knowledge. But discovery alone and even invention alone does not innovation make. And it is innovation where the value add comes in. And that's what people should be rewarded for.
And let me just get down to what they're both saying is, if you allow patents to be basically the whole process to be balkanized, then you will create what economists are now calling the tragedy of the anti-commons. All of us who took economics know that the tragedy of the commons is if something belongs to everybody, it belongs to nobody, so nobody will go cut the grass on a town square. That's the tragedy of the commons. There's also a tragedy of the anti-commons. If we all own a piece of the town square and it's 6 inches square, it's going to be hard as heck to find anybody who can practically maintain our piece of it. And so this is what we're talking about. The patent system in America got haywire and we're trying to get it back. But a lot of you will want to be involved in this kind of innovation because it may enable you to live to be 120 or 130, but it won't if we screw it up. So that's what we're talking about. Now, I want to give Jessica a chance to talk because she has a whole different story. But if ever there was an innovator, she's it. And she came up with an idea for clean energy that I think it's fair to say hardly anybody else on the planet had ever thought of. So tell us about Uncharted Play. Tell us about Socket. Tell us how it works so the scientists here can figure out
So I guess let me start with Socket. It's based on high school physics, so I think you should, and I think actually just to preface this, everything that you've said, each time when you're going through everything from the social media and everything, I was sitting here saying, when he talks about young people, he's talking about me. Like, you know, like, and I'm sitting here thinking like, well, we'll handle this. Don't worry, you guys. Like, we hear you, we get it, we'll handle this. Like, the social media thing, when you asked the question, I was thinking, yeah, well, maybe we could do this. I get YouTube, you know, YouTube is how I watch all my television shows. That's us. I'm thinking about learning about physics, and my degree's in psychology and economics, but when we came in developing the Socket, we all very quickly found Wikipedia to be our best friend. And you know, I may not have a degree in engineering, but I can tell you a lot about it now. And there's something to say, you know, there's something to be said about not being afraid to teach yourself and learn and understand all the tools that these great innovators have given to us and just work from there. Speaking, I guess, specifically about the Socket, so it's a soccer ball that's also a portable generator. And what it does is it harnesses the power from play, the regular motion from play, and stores it as energy that you can later use and access for other critical power needs that you may have. It was specifically made for the developing world, so for example, 15 minutes of play can power an LED lamp for 3 hours, at least our old version. And now we're actually, you know, continually researching and working on something new. And again, what I know about engineering, it really is worth learning. I'm not going to lie, it's worth learning. But you know, we're working on ways to power water sterilization and purification systems, mini refrigerators. So the idea is that we can empower people with this ball that they can put in their time and their play, enjoy their time. 15 minutes later, they have the power to read at night, to clean their water, to store their food properly, and then we just start to kind of permeate into their lives. So that's generally what the idea of the Socket is, to not just solve the power problem, but solve it in a fun way. And I think that's part of our generation, that we want to have fun, and solving problems and addressing serious issues, if you do it in a way that's enjoyable, all of a sudden it becomes less of this, you know, constant reminder of what you lack, and more of an kind of a group celebration, a kind of a group community understanding of humanity and saying, you know what, I may not have reliable access to power, but I sure do love soccer. And playing for 15 minutes is not a problem at all. In fact, when we give the ball often to kids, we say, okay, you only need to play for 15 minutes. 2 hours later, we're like, hey, you can stop playing with the ball now and start reading or doing other things with it. So that's it's fun. So, and then there's the whole other idea for us too, was trying to develop something that could really empower people to understand how they can affect their own environments. So going to these areas, let's say a small community in Nigeria where I'm from, and saying, it's not just people coming down to you and telling you how we can fix your area. It's us saying, here's an idea. Here's this thing you may have never thought of, this ball that already you love because you're normally used to kicking around plastic bags, and understanding what else it can do. And our favorite thing is when I hand it to a kid and he says, oh, wow, this is so cool. And then 5 minutes later, he comes back and he's like, I have some ideas that we can make this better, And this is like a 7-year-old kid. He was like, did you think about this? Yeah, I understand if you didn't, don't worry. And all of a sudden, it becomes this inspiration thing where they're sitting there saying, and I was thinking of putting a windmill over there in my backyard and yada, yada, yada. And these are the kind of things we want to do to inspire these kids to also look into life sciences, look into engineering, and figure out how they can fix their own problems. So,
how many are out there? How many balls are in circulation?
Right now, we have just under 1,000 in circulation. We just finished a huge round of testing for the past 2 years. We've tested in South Africa, Nigeria, Liberia, Haiti, and Spain most recently. And now it's this summer. We're actually really excited. We're getting ready to launch a huge distribution, mass scale, getting out tens of thousands across the world.
And how are you? I have 2 questions. How'd you get the money to pay for it? Number 1, and number 2, have you tested it enough to know that people will keep using it when the new wears off?
Yeah. So first for the money, a lot of it initially came from grants. The beauty of innovating in school is that there are a lot of programs that are out there to say, sure, that sounds like a great idea, here's 5,000, here's 10,000. So we built up the money there, and then there are a few angel investors who really believed in us. I will be honest, it's nice to also have parents who believe in you and say, you know what, fine, here you go, here's your graduation gift, make something of yourself, I like your idea. So kind of the mix of having friends and family that have been supporting us, angel investors, and grants, we were able to slowly but surely fund the research. In terms of what we've been looking at for our research, yes, we have been looking at the general churn of how people want to use the ball and how they're continuing to use it. And actually, over periods of months and on, it actually very easily becomes part of their daily routine, playing with it a bit because that's what that's what people tend to love to do around the world is play soccer, and then using it in ways that they would normally use, let's say, a kerosene lamp or any other, or a diesel generator. So it fits in very well as a healthy alternative, or a more healthy alternative to those lighting power options. We've also been really looking at, though, understanding that very critical balance between keeping it fun. That's actually very key, and for a lot of you out there as social entrepreneurs, thinking of ways to fix problems, the most important thing is to make sure that by fixing one problem, you don't create another. The way to do that is to sit down and look at all the opportunities for the benefits of your product, but then look at the things that may happen if it does actually exist successfully in that environment. So thinking about the infrastructure that may not be built because you have this thing going out there. Or even the idea of perhaps taking something away from these people. Like, we would never want to take away the joy of playing soccer because we've introduced the socket. So it's been very kind of key strategic decisions saying, oh, 15 minutes of play equals this, as opposed to 5 hours of play, because you don't want the kids 3 hours later saying, Mommy, please let me stop playing soccer, and they're there trudging away. So it's been really important for us to understand how we place this into their environments, how we limit it so it's not abused, and also making sure people know that we're not saying this is the overall solution to all the power problems around the globe, but that it's really just a way of addressing it and shedding light on it, using a sport that's universal.
You propose to eventually sell these at retail to people? And how long do they last on average?
Do you mean the balls? So in terms of sale, the idea is first to see how we can partner with NGOs and other companies with interests in the areas where they really need this power, and see if we can get them out there in mass distribution, and then eventually allow for some kind of buy one, get one model where we can fund them pretty sustainably. You know, you purchase one here and you can play with it as a novelty toy. Maybe when you go camping, it's pretty useful as well. While I'm from New York, and I think a year and a half ago, there was a big snowstorm, and it was horrible. There was no power for at least 3 days, and my mom was very glad that she had a daughter that created this, because she was just kicking around the ball the entire day, just trying to get some light to do what she could do. So you never know when you might need them here, too. But those are generally our two models, looking at kind of wholesale distribution and eventually buy one, get one, as we continue to research and iterate to get the exact model right. Look. In terms of how long the ball will last, our original version, which was actually built with off-the-shelf parts, it wasn't built at mass scale, so there are many different parts. That lasted up to 6 months usually. What we're working on right now will have a lifespan of about 3 years.
And how much money do you have in it per ball?
Excuse me?
What does it cost to build one ball? What's the unit cost?
The unit cost, what we're aiming for, is under $10. And right now we're right on track.
Well, let me just say, I want to point out two things, and I want to ask Shirley a question. We'll come back. Number one, if you look at Haiti, 85% of the people in Haiti had no electricity in their homes before the earthquake. In Monrovia, Liberia, where I do a lot of work and where I worked with Bob Johnson, the founder of BET, to build 2 big hotels, and we're trying to help bring them back. There's still a staggering percentage of people in the capital that don't have their electricity back. So one of the things that we need to think through is, and Haiti is a good example, is what would be the most cost-effective way to bring lighting to people, to bring enough power to look at a television at night, to power a computer at night for a student, to allow a mother to have enough light to do sewing or whatever. And could you do that off-grid so you can reserve the grid for the things you really need heavy capacity and reliability for, and make it more efficient by targeting it? This is very important in the Caribbean for all of you that are interested in this, because the Caribbean has the highest electric rates in the world because they have to import 100% of their energy except for the modest amount of oil and gas that Trinidad has. So this is not a flighty thing here. This is not only serious for the young people who can, kick on an LED light and study at night. I think, if you want to really get power to poor people in a hurry, you have to look at the solar villages in India. You have to look at some of the things in the high mountains of Ethiopia. You've got to look at some of the smaller scale wind, some of the off-grid things that are done. So I think it's very exciting, and a lot of you may want to follow up. Now, I'm about to start asking questions from the audience, but I would be remiss, since we have our physicist here, if I did not ask Shirley 2 things. Number one, what conclusions should we draw from what happened in Japan? What's the real danger zone? And what, if anything, does it mean for what we should do going forward with nuclear power?
Well, thank you for the trivial question, Mr. President. I think what happened in Japan, and I'm going to be careful because, as you know, I was the chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. I'm not the chairman today. But as far as one can discern, and most of what I've discerned comes from public records, what's in the public arena. This was a classic example of what I call intersecting vulnerabilities, namely the perfect storm of things happening all at once. The loss of the shutdown of the reactors, the loss of the off-site power, and the backup power being essentially wiped out by the tsunami. Now, one can make various arguments and raise various questions about what could or couldn't have been done or should not have been done. But the truth of the matter is that each industrial facility is designed to withstand some set of phenomena. They call it the design basis catastrophe. So this plant had a series of events that went beyond the design basis of the plant. Now, in terms of being concerned, let me hearken back to 3 Mile Island. With 3 Mile Island, for different reasons, we actually had the core in one of the reactors uncovered. There was actual damage of the core, a partial meltdown, etc. But as far as can be discerned, no real public health effects in the short or the long term. Now, the Japanese situation is a little different because of apparent high degrees of contamination locally. But as far as global impact, Chernobyl was much bigger, and for reasons that we could talk about, but I won't spend the time. Our big focus has to be for the Japanese, compassion for them, the need to stabilize those plants, the need to restore infrastructure, and to get people back into their homes. There is a lot of hype and a lot of hysteria about impact here. But the real impact is on the Japanese. It is a serious situation.
Let me ask you this. Well, I want to get to the questions here in the audience, but I do want to ask this. As I understand it, most of the radiation leaks here came because the structure that was holding the spent plutonium fuel rods, which have quite a long half-life, cracked apart under the combined pressure of the quake and the tsunami. I don't think anybody ever thought there'd be a quake measured this intensely. And I guess the question that I would want to know as an American, let me make full disclosure here. When I was governor of Arkansas, we have the longest continuously operating nuclear power plants in America. They're about 150 miles from the biggest earthquake fault in the central part of the country, the New Madrid Fault. We had one minor malfunction and the thing shut down just like it was supposed to. I am not a viscerally anti-nuclear person, but what scared me about Japan and its application to America is with the lack of resolution about what should be done with nuclear waste. As a practical matter, could the Japanese have designed something that would not have cracked if it had been physically present where this was? That's what bothered me, and the only thing that bothered me is about that.
Well, let's talk very quickly. There are two places where you worry about effect. One is the reactor itself, and the other has to do with the spent fuel, meaning the used up rods, but they have very interesting radionuclides of various kinds that can do various things to you. They're stored in pools until they cool down enough, and then they're put in dry casks. So if you want to do a vulnerability analysis, that's where you have to focus, on the reactor itself and on these spent fuel pools. And it seems, but any spent fuel pool, if it loses the water, will uncover that fuel. And when it uncovers it, things start to disintegrate because it's very hot. And so that's the concern. And they have spent fuel pools that have plutonium because they use mixed oxide fuel. Yeah. But plutonium is not volatile. That's why I say, well, you need to worry about the Japanese.
I agree with that.
Because it is there. What comes through the air has an 8-day half-life. That's the radioactive iodine.
Okay, let's go to the questions from the audience. The first question was submitted via text for Chad. In your experience, what is the most impactful way in which social media, like YouTube,
has already contributed to positive social change?
Well, it's hard to just pick one way. I think YouTube or just social media in general has affected the world for the better. And it's gone far beyond what I could have ever imagined when we started building the site. But if I had to put my finger on a few, I guess